You know, there's a book out there that's so influential, so controversial, that for 500 years, its author's name has basically been used as an insult. A guide to power so ruthless, it's been blamed for inspiring some of history's worst tyrants. Of course, I'm talking about Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince. But here's the real question. Is it actually the devil's handbook everyone says it is?
Yeah, when you hear the word Machiavellian, this is exactly what pops into your head, right? You picture this shadowy figure, scheming in the dark, a politician who believes the ends justify the means, no matter how brutal those means get. It's pretty much become a synonym for political evil.
But what if that's just the simplified bumper sticker version? What if the way we all use that word is a complete misreading of a much deeper, more desperate message? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into today.
For centuries, The Prince has been seen as just that, a cold-blooded, cynical manual for how to grab power and hold on to it no matter the cost. You know, the kind of book you'd read behind closed doors? But that interpretation completely leaves out the world that created the book in the first place.
Because really, context is everything here. To get to the truth of The Prince, you have to go back to Renaissance Italy, a place that was just riddled with chaos, constant warfare, and betrayal.
See, Machiavelli wasn't just some philosopher writing from a comfortable, quiet study. Nope, he was a high-ranking diplomat, a politician who had seen it all firsthand. He lived and worked in a world where your ally today was very likely your enemy tomorrow, and where entire countries could just be wiped off the map overnight.
Okay, so this timeline really shows you the sheer instability of his time. It all kicks off in 1494, when a French invasion just completely shatters the old order. Out of those ashes, Machiavelli's beloved Florentine Republic is born, and for almost 2 decades, he's a dedicated public servant trying to navigate this storm. But then, bam, in 1512, the Medici family storms back into power. For Machiavelli, it's a total collapse. He doesn't just lose his job, he's thrown in prison, he's tortured, and then he's exiled.
So this book wasn't some abstract philosophical exercise. He wrote The Prince from absolute rock bottom. It was, in a way, a desperate job application, and he dedicated it to the very Medici prince who had just destroyed his life. He was trying to prove his value, to show the new guys in charge, hey, you need me, I get how power really works.
And his understanding of power was nothing short of revolutionary. Machiavelli's main goal was to solve the problem he saw all around him: chaos. And he believed that the old ways of thinking about leadership, you know, the ones based on traditional Christian morality, were just failing to keep people safe.
And this is where he makes a radical break with the past. Before Machiavelli, philosophers would ask how a ruler ought to live to be a good and moral person. Machiavelli just flips that question completely. He asks what a ruler must do to survive. He basically argues that a prince's #1 job isn't saving his own soul, it's saving the state from collapsing into bloody chaos. And this is the absolute core of his argument. The survival and stability of the state is the ultimate good. Everything else is secondary. So a ruler's actions have to be judged by that one standard. Think about it. If one cruel act secures the state and prevents a civil war that would kill thousands, well, isn't that, in its own way, a moral act?
He even lays out this pragmatic toolkit for survival. A ruler can't just be a lion, all brute force, because he'll walk right into traps. And he can't just be a fox, all cunning and schemes, because he'll be defenseless against brute force, against the wolves. To survive, a leader has to be able to adapt, using both overwhelming strength and clever deception whenever the situation calls for it.
Okay, so this brings us to his most famous, and maybe his most misunderstood piece of advice. This is the one that has defined his name for 500 years.
Kinda chillin', right? Taken all by itself, this sounds like a tyrant's motto. And his logic is cold. Love is fickle. It depends on other people. But fear? Fear is something a prince can control.
But you gotta look closer. This is not a blank check for cruelty. Not at all. Machiavelli makes a crucial distinction. A prince should be feared, yes, but he must never be hated. Because hatred is what fuels rebellions. And how do you avoid being hated? It's surprisingly simple. Don't take people's property and don't touch their families. For Machiavelli, cruelty is a surgical tool. You use it swiftly and precisely to restore order, and then you put it away. And this all ties into his ideas on public perception. A ruler needs to maintain the image of virtue. He's got to seem merciful, faithful, and religious, all the things people admire. But behind the scenes, he has to be willing to do the exact opposite of those things if the survival of the state is on the line. It's really about separating the public role from the private, cold calculations of power. So,
Why does this short book, written by a disgraced politician over 500 years ago, still have such a powerful, such a controversial hold on us today?
Well, it's because Machiavelli completely changed the way we talk about power. He gave us a new vocabulary, separating the morality of the state from the morality of an individual. This actually laid the foundation for what we now call realpolitik, the idea that nations act based on cold, hard self-interest. For centuries, leaders have studied this book, some as a guide, others as a warning. But nobody can ignore the uncomfortable questions he forces us all to think about.
And that is the huge question that the prince leaves us with. Are leaders sometimes required to break the moral rules that the rest of us live by, all in the name of the greater good? Or was Machiavelli, a guy who loved the Republic, actually writing a satire, a warning to the people by showing them exactly how the powerful operate? Maybe the book's true genius is that we can never really be sure. And that's why, 500 years later, we are still arguing about Machiavelli. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only.